I don't know what I'm going to knock off first, that tape player or this water, but I'm glad they're both up here with me. My name is Bill Crawford, and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to say that it is good to be back at the primary purpose group. I get down here from time to time. Some of you are rolling your eyes already. Him again. Seen some old, you look at, some of you new, look at somebody as old and decrepit as me. You think nobody could predate him in sobriety because he's pretty ancient. But there are two people in this room that are older and more seasoned by far than me. Three. I'm sorry. There are three old geezers older than me, and I've been around, I'm grown old in Alcoholics Anonymous, so I rarely get to a meeting or a gathering where that happens. So it is a privilege. I need to say that I'm here on a special occasion, a special milestone for Brad, who introduced me. And I get to do rather much of this speaking. I'm privileged to be asked often or often enough, and nothing is more gratifying to me than to be asked to speak at someone's AA birthday. So I appreciate it, Brad. When somebody like me says I'm an alcoholic, I guess most of us have heard that word all our lives. It's not a strange word. People are referred to as alcoholic. People outside this room use that term when they're talking about someone in their view who drinks too much or having trouble with alcohol. But we know that when we say it, it speaks volumes. We're not just saying I've had a little trouble with alcohol or a lot of trouble with alcohol. I'm saying that alcohol ruled my life. I am saying that I am powerless of myself, of my volition, my strength, my will. I'm powerless over alcohol. And if you're new and you're not quite sure what that means that of myself, I cannot drink and I cannot not drink. Now, the fact that I cannot drink doesn't mean that I can't bend my elbow and swallow. It means that I cannot drink without problem. I cannot drink and stop. I cannot drink without damage to others and damage to me. I cannot drink and control the amount. I cannot drink and control or direct my behavior. And there's nothing about this program that does anything about that. That'll never change. That only gets worse. And even though I hadn't had a drink in a long, long time, my physical and probably mental ability to tolerate the drug alcohol is worse now than it was those years ago. What we celebrate here, what we treat here, is that part of me, of my psyche, my makeup or whatever, that I cannot of myself not drink. Given my own devices, given just me without you and God that you have brought to me, I'll drink again. And thank God I know I'll drink again. I think people forget after they get comfortable here and things come back to them, they go to a bank account and they're back in the big bed and things are sort of working in their favor. They forget that that's still, given their own strength and will, that they cannot not drink. I talked a lot about this in recent times because I've been thinking a lot of that. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was given that gift. The gift of desire is something we cannot give someone else. It's a gift that I cannot impose on someone else. Can't explain it, can't teach it. I can't let someone else have that gift. If it had to do with deserving it or being smart enough or of great enough character or whatever to get that gift, it would never have been bestowed upon me. Somehow, and it's still a mystery to me, oh, I know that God knows what he's doing. I was given the gift of desire. Nothing else happens unless that happens. Our book tells us that must come from within. We don't push or prod. That desire must come from within. The experts say that just 10% of people who experiment with alcohol have that special relationship with it that we try to describe in meetings like this, that our book tries to describe. Just 10% get that reward and later develop that allergy that most people don't get. Or the way I like to put it, 9 in 10 waste every drop they drink. They confuse us as much as we confuse them. I am married to one of the worst cases of non-alcoholism. It's a terminal condition. And it has not improved over the years. It gets worse. Non-alcoholism gets worse. It's a progressive thing. Let me, of all the money and the great minds and great scientific communities that have come together and studied us for years and still do, trying to determine what it is about Bill Crawford that makes him distinct in his relationship with alcohol from most people. And it's probably good that they've made the effort and spent the time and the great mentality to try to know what is at root here. As far as I know, they've never spent a dime studying them. And they outnumber us 10-1. You'd think somebody would come up with a grant to find out what causes non-alcoholism. So what I've done is I've studied Kay. I don't have any money, so I just have used her as a control group. And over the years, particularly in our early years when we were dating or newly married, she has done some drinking. She's ingested alcohol. And this has been years and years and years ago, but there were times then when she ingested enough to know the feeling, to feel at least the beginnings of intoxication. You know what she does? She stops. Let me repeat this for the newcomer in case that went right by. I know that went by some people that are new. She gets the pilot lit and stops. That demands research. It's high time someone looked into that. So I have asked her, why do you do that? And she says, because when I begin to feel that feeling, I feel as if I'm losing control. I don't like that feeling, and I stop. The only semblance of control that I ever had then, the only thing that made me feel wrapped tight enough at all was the same stuff, going through the same kind of central nervous system and getting into these receptors that they talk about. Same stuff. She can't help that, and I can't help that. That's all I need to know. Now, I know non-alcoholics like to get a little tipsy on New Year's Eve, and here we come in a Memorial Day, people drinking a little bit Sundays. Nothing more dangerous than some non-alcoholic out on the road on a Memorial with a blood alcohol count of about a 0.06. They're just all over the place and out of control. The people in this room been blowing a 30. And driving straight as it out. Might be going 19 miles an hour, but we can keep it between the She can't help that and I can't help that. There's something different. Silkworth, if you've not read the doctor's opinion in our book lately, let me encourage you to read it again. Because Silkworth did not try to explain it, figure it out, or anything. He just had observed us, thousands. He directed a hospital that treated countless numbers of us. And he did not set out to do a scientific study to figure this thing out. He said, let me tell you my observations. Things I cannot help but see about these people. And no matter what they say, he says, people like the effect produced by alcohol. That's why they drink it. These people I treat drink it because they like the buzz. They like the intoxication. And even though they have clear evidence that it's injurious, it hurts them, they continue to drink. But he said something else amazed him that he couldn't figure out, and he was a physician. These people have a physical relationship with this alcohol that's different from other people. These people have a physiological allergy, he called it. It's a phenomenon of craving. If you don't know the word phenomenon, I didn't. I know it now. It just means something you can see, you just can't explain it. And so he said they have a phenomenon of craving, meaning I see it, but I can't explain it. When they take a drink, they're more agitated, they're more uncomfortable, they're more craving than if they'd had none at all. I knew that at age 19. I knew if I was in a situation where I could only get a drink or two, I better stay away from it. Even if I wanted to drink pretty badly, I better stay away from it because I was going to be more craving, more agitated, more uncomfortable with a drink or two than with none at all. Alcoholism, our stories, I've listened to thousands of us share. It's in the beginning, it's what it does for us. That's the deal. If it doesn't do anything for you, if you're like Kay, you're not going to have any problems with alcohol. It's not going to do anything to you. And that reward at least seems to greatly outweigh the price we pay. I was raised in alcoholism. I like to say I was raised in a home with a dual problem. We had alcoholism and Southern Baptism right in the same house, which I know is not unique to me. And I was turned off by the notion of beverage alcohol. I knew I'd never drink, but I did. So many of us, I've heard that testimonial from thousands of us that we had every reason, every piece of evidence in the world not to drink by our own family or a family member. And yet we begin to drink. Many of us blame that on peer pressure. I think a lot of that was true with me, that I look back on my life and the guys that I wanted to be with, the guys I wanted to be included among, were drinking. I was a social drinker. A lot of you don't understand social drinking. I know social drinking. I was a social drinker for about 6 weeks, as best I can turn. And what ended my social drinking, I ingested enough cheap wine one night with Sonny and Charlie at the Green Hill Cemetery, where we'd go for privacy occasionally, to know the feeling, and anything like social drinking, anything like drinking with impunity ended that night. Because it did what it does for us. It made me comfortable in a world that for me was mostly uncomfortable. It made me enough. It filled a hole that I didn't even know was there until it was filled. I just assumed that Charlie and Sonny felt the same way, that they got the same reward. I drank with a lot of guys during that time that did all the hell raising and fighting and running around and all the things that I did that later didn't drink or drank like people should, I guess. I just assume we all got this special thing. And this is what happened to me. What happens to us? Those of us certainly in this room, because as I say, I've heard thousands of testimonials in rooms like this from people like you in this room. And everybody says that the reward gets smaller and the price gets bigger. It's like we come to that place, Apex or whatever, where the price just overshoots the reward by a great amount. And you would think if some outside observer was observing me and watching this progression going on, that probably they would think, well, when that happens, when the damage is so much greater than anything he gets from it, then he'll stop. But by then, if I understand your stories correctly, and if I know what it's like living in my skin, in my head, by then it's too late. Because even though I know, when I know, and those moments of clarity that it is injurious to me, it's still the only thing I have that'll make things almost okay. Now, maybe you heard me talk before, that different things happen to us, and we get bogged down on that, especially new, we want to compare, you know. And then we get where we're kind of proud, you know. I've had 15 DUIs, and, you know, somebody, yeah, I've had 40, you know. But in the beginning, we hear these things, and we say, well, I'm not like that. That guy lost a couple of families. I've never lost a family. Now, whoever said it may forget he's never had a family, but that's at least somebody's liver falls out or something. Well, that's not happened to me. I've still got my liver. In fact, it's sticking out to here. But what we identify with is on some more basic, more real level, isn't it? That's what we identify with. Not what happens so much, but what it brings to these insides, to the very core of our existence, where we live. That's the comparison. I drank because I liked the effect produced by alcohol. And I began to do the things and have the things happen to me that happened to other alcoholics. That phenomenal craving, as I said, I knew very early. Started having those amnesia spells too. Now, I was talking at an Al-Anon convention a few years ago down in Georgia, and a lady came up to me after I spoke and said, I'm not an alcoholic and I've had blackouts. And I didn't argue with her, because I guess it's possible for a non-alcoholic to have blackouts. But if you're here auditing this meeting tonight and you've been having those amnesia spells, I would consider signing up, because it seems like that is mostly peculiar to us. I began to lose control of the amount I was drinking. I didn't mean to drink this much, and I drank that much. I began to lose control over my behavior. No matter what I set out to have a good time or whatever, I ended up someplace, some way different. And the personality change became greater and greater and greater, and then it became more antisocial. Let me tell you who came to you in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had been on a drunk up in St. Louis for 2 weeks. I was working with some crooked company, and I'd been drunk up there for 2 weeks. I came back home and called Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd done many other things, but I came back on this hot, flew back into Greensboro. And I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous, not the real nuances of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I knew that Alcoholics Anonymous would come see my daddy. The man who brought AA to Greensboro, a man by the name of Bill Hunter, an attorney in Greensboro, would come see my father. Usually at my mother's request, but I knew about AA. Called AA. And when AA called me back, when the answering service gave my name to Bill Norman, and Tom and I were just talking about Bill, Tom and Fern and I, at dinner tonight, when he called me back, we had a brief conversation. I was, I'd learned to taper off. Well, I'd learned about tapering off. It's a real art to do it yourself, and I was tapering off that day because I've been drunk up in St. Louis 2 weeks. Kay could never tell the difference in tapering off and drinking. It looks a lot alike. And I would tell her many times, no, I quit drinking yesterday. Today I'm just tapering off. And what would confuse her is I'd overdose tapering off. And then for a 3-day drunk, I'd taper off for another 2 weeks sometime. And Bill said, "You're drinking, aren't you?" "Well, not really. I'm tapering off." Well, he didn't want to rush to my aid, but I took his name and number, and that's how Kate got started in Al-Anon, because she took that number out of the safe place that she put it in the man's name, and she called, and from that call she got into Al-Anon. And when Al-Anon, and I say this just about every time I have the privilege to talk, when Al-Anon comes into that home, into that sickness, it's not there to cure or to fix the alcoholic or alcoholism. But it'll break your rhythm, I'll guarantee you that. What was happening is wellness or whatever, some sort of recovery. Now, if she were up speaking now, she would tell you very quickly that she didn't recover in the next minute or the next month or the next whatever. But it was a beginning. And he changed the game in the house. She looked at me on June the 2nd of 1967, and I'm coming off that another drunk. I'm coming off another episode like the 200 to 300 before, where damage is done, where you need to fix a lot of things. You need to hide out. You don't answer the phone or the door. And she looked at me and said, "Can we call Bill?" I knew about Bill because when I would listen, she would tell me about Bill and Lib. And she dialed the phone, and Bill came on the phone, and when he knew who it was, he said, "Are you about ready to throw in the towel now?" This is who came to me. I was out of everything. I'd been fired from the same place 4 times. And it was a straight commission job. It wasn't like they were paying me anything when I didn't do anything. I was 4 times. They were losing their sense of humor. I'd been kicked out of, you're talking about lower companionship. The lower companions were done with me. I'd been kicked out of a string of my favorite water nuts. I guess my biggest accomplishment is getting kicked out for life from the Bamboo Lounge. Now what makes that so singular, I guess, is you don't notch down from the Bamboo Lounge. You don't go to the next worst place. There is no next worst place. And I couldn't go back in there. Now, at the end of this last drunk, it was the Varsity Grill that kicked me out for life. So I'm not saying that was the Bamboo Lounge cured me by getting kicked out of there. It's just one of those places that you and I would not be caught dead in there. And I couldn't go back there. So nobody had to check my schedule. Now, all meetings at that time were at 8 o'clock at night, which some of you remember, right? All meetings were 8 p.m. And nobody had to check my schedule to see if I could fit in some AA meetings. You know, I worked with people in recent years where they got soccer practice on Tuesday, you know, all these kinds of things. My nights were free. When you're kicked out for life from the Bamboo Lounge, your nights are free. If you've been fired from the same place the fourth time, your days are free. So Bill told her, Kay, she was still working, told her to deliver me to the club every morning, and I would spend my day there, that safe place. You know, the first step that we've heard read tonight that we hope is drummed into our head permanently. It says we're powerless over alcohol. I admit that. I'm powerless over alcohol, and because of that, my life is unmanageable. I cannot manage my affairs. I cannot, of my strength and will, make my life work. You know, when I was newly sober, I've been sober less than a year, and I was at a meeting one night in Greensboro, and a man much senior to me, I don't mean just in age, but in the program, said he stayed sober just on the first step alone. And even as new as I was, I knew something's wrong with that. Something is incorrect about that. But see, the first step is just a statement of hopelessness. If the first step is all I can grasp, if the first step is all that I can own, then there's nothing left but to shoot myself or go live under a bridge somewhere and drink myself to death. But what follows immediately is that second step, saying there is hope. You're hopeless, Bill Crawford, but there is hope. Yourself ain't worked, but there's something bigger and beyond yourself that does. At that first meeting that I attended, speaker meeting, the first meeting that I attended, somebody after this reading that I didn't understand that was done tonight, somebody bellied up to a podium like this and began to tell the story that we tell. I never tire of that. I don't know how many thousands of speaker meetings I've attended. If you want somebody to listen attentively and with interest to your story, call me tonight. I'll listen to every syllable of it. I never tire of that. You get that happy ending. You know I'm going to give you a happy ending tonight. You already got that figured out. That guy's going to get sober and give a happy ending. Hadn't failed me so far. Now tomorrow night I may go to a meeting. The guy said I never make it. I'm drunk right now, but so far I've got that happy ending. There is hope. Bill told me don't go to the Sunday night step discussion meeting. There's a couple of screwballs up there that'll confuse you. Take Sunday off. There was just one meeting in town. Yeah, in Greensboro at that time there were 11 meetings, 9 groups. Central met 3 times a week, so it was 11 meetings. Now there's 111, I guess, in Greensboro. I don't know. But there's no other meeting on Sunday night, so you stay home. Stay away from it. I could not wait to sneak off to the Sunday night step discussion. The screwballs weren't real hard to. One, we don't know what happened to. It was a nut. One, very tragically, killed his wife, tried to kill his wife, and he did kill himself not too long after that. But they were there every Sunday night. I begin to explain agnosticism to the group. That goes over great at an AA meeting. If you want to get a good topic, tell them about your agnosticism and kind of prove it. They love it at AA meetings. And nobody reached across their chair and punched me in the nose like they should have. They loved me anyway. And on group level or at the coffee pot afterwards, they would say in so many words, I used to be like you. And they would give me simple little recipes to deal with it, like getting up in the morning and saying, let me have this day without a drink, and that night, whether I believed or whether I disbelieved that night before I went to bed, to say thank you. And I begin to do this. Our prayer begin with me. The time came when I had to expand that prayer. The time came when I had to go beyond that thank you. The time became beyond please. The time when it got beyond that serenity prayer you taught me. And I had to voice that third step prayer. To this date, it is the best, the most meaningful, the most used prayer in Bill Crawford's life. God, I offer myself to thee. To build with me and do with me as I will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so I can better do your will. Take away my difficulties. Not because life will be easy. Take away my difficulties so others can see, the people I want to help can see that something good happens here. May I do your will always. Amen. It's a prayer I say at least a couple of times a day while I'm walking the dog or whatever. Sometimes many times a day. You know, we say this prayer really, I think, Bill writes in the book, you think well before you take this step. It's a big deal. It's not something you just don't cavalierly do because the other people are doing it. You're going to do it because you're going to set on a course of action that's going to change you. Back then, and not to play old timer for a minute, but back then you had less hands-on taking folks through the steps than we do now. Thank God. We got the kind of sponsorship now where it is hands-on and people are led through the steps by their sponsor or someone senior to them in the program. Back then you were sponsored mostly in service. You know, you clean the ashtray, stack the chairs, your turn to share the meat and make the coffee. But I was telling Tom, my original sponsor was a big book student. And even though he didn't take me and lead me through the steps, through going to conferences and being with senior people in his guidance in the book, I began to do what we call the steps, that house cleaning phase. You know, I had a little trouble with the inventory. Nobody told me go off in the corner and write down your life story or write down what's wrong with you, because they knew I would lie to me. How do you get to me? How does someone who's lied to himself for years, a practiced self-deceiver, how do I get to me? Bill calls it getting down to causes and conditions. How do I do that? Well, you tell me, you list the people you resent, a grudge list. Well, I didn't have resentments, really. I was a pretty jovial guy, and I just didn't have resentments. I knew what the word meant. It was pointed out you hate everybody. Just put down everybody you know. Oh, okay. That's easy. That's how I begin to know me. If I'm mad, if you're mad, something's threatened. It's as simple as that. You can't be mad unless something's threatened. And that's all let's say. If you're mad, let's see what causes you to be mad, and let's see what's threatened. And then I can find out my faults, and I can go there. And my fears. See, behind all that anger is fear, because something's threatened. Now, I've done this several times. Not everybody has to do it several times. Many people who are solid citizens in this program have taken 1/4 and 1/5 step, and that has sustained them and quite well. I'm the type that I felt the need to do it more than once over the years. I've had the privilege on several occasions of taking a group of men usually together and us working the steps together. And I've been allowed to facilitate that, and we go through the steps together. Not just studying them, not just learning them, but doing them. And because of that, I've exercised this part of the deal several times. And I discover more and more. Not only more and more that I did when I was drinking, but more and more about what's going on with me now that's self-destructive and harmful. fact, it hadn't been too long ago, I took a group through the steps, and what a rewarding thing to see a different light come into some of these guys' eyes when they're doing something that maybe they hadn't done before, or at least on that depth. Once I know what ails me, these manifestations of self, once I know what's eating me, what are the things that these character defects that Bill writes about, once I know what those are, I can at least exercise whatever willingness I can have at that time to be rid of them. And I pray to be rid of them. But we're not asked to pray, make me pure, knock everything off, I want to levitate and all that. We're not asked to do that. We're to go to God and say, take away the things that stand in the way of my usefulness to you. I can't let everything go. If you'd have taken all the character defects out of me when I first walked in, I'd have disappeared. That was all I was. That was my being. And then I could take that grudge list and just scratch out grudge and put a men's list. They're about the same people. About the same people. Any institution, anything that's important in my life probably belonged on that list. And you make amends. Now you can't unring a bell. I can't undo the harm I did to her. But I can say I'm sorry, and I can do the things now to make it right. Some of you young people would love to hear, in a way you'll love to hear this, and in a way you'll kind of resent it. I came along when they first came out with credit cards. Before computers. Now there's somebody going to salivate about this. You could run with that credit card forever. Now, they couldn't cut it off at Command Central either. Some merchant had to take it from you. You get the merchants, get gas stations or whatever on alert, and if you showed up, they'd pay them a fee for, getting that card, collecting that card. So that meant I could go a long way on these credit cards. I went a long way on these credit cards. So the thing to do with, at that time they called it Humble Oil, it's now Exxon and Texaco, and write them a letter and say, well, I'm sorry, I did that to you. No, you got to pay them, is what they told me. Oh, that's an amendment. Okay. And so you pay us a little bit of money along. When you do those kinds of things, you can start answering the phone again. Not afraid of the front door. Walk down any side of any street, anywhere, and not have to change directions or change sides because who you see coming. Quit looking over my shoulder. The dread that owned me was being relieved. We can maintain this by, I don't have to get real complicated about these things that might be sins or defects or any of these things, these terms we hear. Bill doesn't instruct. My sponsor didn't instruct. Every time you do wrong, you better watch it. Every time you sin, you better correct it. What we're told is we're to look for 4 things. Keep it simple for Bill Crawford. Anger and selfishness, fear and dishonesty. When I'm out of whack and something's wrong with me, it comes under one or more of these headings. It's as simple as that. Usually first, selfishness. And I don't have to sit down at the end of the night and write down anything. I can check myself all day long. I don't feel right. Something's not right here. Promptly admit it and try to correct it. I sponsor right many people, and a lot of people are calling me and they're telling me things like this, and I tell them, you're doing the 10th step right now. You're properly admitting it, and you're setting yourself up to make it right. I was raised in church, raised in a good church, and I didn't hear the good part. I got away from church. As I told you earlier, I became an agnostic. non-believer, mostly because I could not live with me and live with that kind of teaching anyway. You know, I don't know when I actually just gave in to the drinking, the alcoholism. But I know a big piece of it is one Sunday morning, somehow she had gotten me to church. Sometime in early 67, I guess. And I went into that holy place, that house of God, that place where good people go to maintain their spiritual balance. And I couldn't stay there. I couldn't bring me to be anywhere close to comfortable in that place. And when her back was turned, I walked out the door. Some buddies of mine came riding by after I walked about a mile and picked me up, and I spent the next long while sleeping on people's couches. She never changed the lock, so when I'd run out of that string, I could come home. And that's as clear as I can say. It's just when I gave it. I don't mean necessarily hitting the bottom and coming to clarity. I mean when I just gave up, there's no use. I'll be like this from now on. And that's the beginning of the bottom, I guess. The beginning of that time where desire can come in. I am giving this gift, I understand, to give it away. I like Bill's parable about the coal gold mine, that you got an absolute load that never ends, and it keeps growing and keeps getting bigger as long as you give the whole proceeds away. That's what we do here. Back then, it was a lot of 12-stepping. My second sponsor was a 12-stepping fool, and we'd get in the car lots of nights and go to lots of places and get a drunk. Sometimes you just had the body. Yeah. And I don't remember a drunk meeting us at the door and saying, "You got some steps I can start working?" It was usually, you know, go take me to the hospital, get me a shot in the butt. Explain this to my wife, give me a place to stay, give me some money, give me to the hospital, maybe get some formaldehyde. Let me close with this. I was at a deal one time, and it's been years ago, and somehow this has come back to me, and I've been thinking about and talking about this lately. And this was a man who's a non-alcoholic professional psychiatrist, as I remember, by his profession. And he was talking not to a group of us, but a group of professionals, and he referenced a playlet or a skit by a great playwright. Let me drink some water, I'll be able to talk. A great playwright by the name of Thornton Wilder of the early 20th century. And it's a little playlet, a little skit, a little short thing called The Angel That Troubled the Water. And it is a great little play. And it's about a little piece in that other big book that some of us know about a pool at Bethesda. And people would come to be healed. And when the angel troubled the water, the first one in was healed of whatever condition, whatever crippling condition, whatever sickness or whatever was healed. And on this particular day, the town doctor was there. And he made sure he was there early, and when the water was stirred, he made sure he was there to be in and be healed first. And the angel says, "Hold on there, physician, this moment is not for you." And he looks at the angel bewildered, and he says, "But see, I'm the community doctor here. And if this weight on my shoulders could be lifted, if this darkness in my soul could be fixed, if the pain I feel at times, it's almost overwhelming, if I could be rid of those, I could be so much more available to and for these folks that depend on me so much." And the angel says, "No, it's because of these things It's because of the very pain you feel at the very depth of your soul that you're able to be there for these people who feel the same pains. So your visit to this pool is denied, and as the physician turns to walk away, someone grabs his sleeves and says, "Please come home with me. My son once again is lost in darkness, and he'll not listen to anybody but you." And then someone else tugs and said, "My daughter has just lost her child, and you're the only one that can comfort her." So the more I think about that little playlet, I think we're the physician. Because this very pain that we had back then, the pain of active alcoholism, those things, the price we paid for finding ourselves in this disease, are the very thing that the very experiences that we can use to understand and help someone else. You know, Bill writes, in God's hands, this dark past is the greatest possession we have. But I carry it a step further, I think. It's now in sobriety, we go through these tough times. We paint ourselves into another corner. We hit one of those down times. We hit those troubled times. We hit those times where, at least if you're like me, it hurts. And you're almost saying, what's the use again? It's these times too that equip me to help someone else who's in that same condition and needs my experience. Lord knows how many times I've come to somebody with this kind of fear in me that's returned. The darkness is returned. And I see that nod on their face, with the nod of their head and that look in their eye that they understand, because they've done it too and come out the other side like we did. So that's what I believe that's what this deal is. I believe that's what Brad owes his gratitude to. Certainly is mine. So anything about me that's worthwhile, anything about me that might help someone else, anything of value is all due here. I've got a lot of things going on in my life, not just AA, but everything's based first here. Everything that I do, everything that I had, the root is here. And for that, I'm grateful. Happy birthday.